Hi, host Eric here. Host Talking with Famous People. And tonight's topic is bad thinking, bad science. You might say, Eric, bad pedantry. What makes you so sure you're right? Why would you be right, Eric, and this super good scientist be wrong? Well, because they're tilting at windmills, for sure. Alright, so let's talk about this so-called ADHD thing. They've got a description of a population of people. Okay, first of all, let's think about this. You have a population of people. Let's say it's 1,000 people. To the extent that the vector of hyper and calm is a descriptor of an individual human being and can be relied upon to give you some sort of insight into what sort of behavior they're going to have. Well, some people are going to be more hyper compared to the mean or the average or whatever, and some are going to be less hyper. And if you take the people who are the most hyper of those 1,000 people and you do a big study on them to determine if they're hyper, you're going to find out that they are. That's one problem these things have, okay? So I go, look, these people are hyper. There must be something wrong with them. First, let's prove there's something wrong with them by gathering a lot of evidence of other people having a problem with them. Okay, fair enough. I mean, we all have to live in society. So if, in fact, a lot of people have a problem with you, then you must have some sort of disorder. One might think initially going in. But, in fact, maybe the problem has to do with the fact that you are forcing them to do shit they don't want to do. So, most of this sort of ADHD stuff online, be it the videos that I watched, be it text or anything like that, is going to be about kids. That's where the biggest market is. I think there are a fair number of ADHD adults out there, or those who get prescribed for ADHD medicine, but those aren't the ones who are going to be desperately looking for information on it. If you're an adult who has ADHD, there's a very good chance that you had it as a kid and were diagnosed with it as a kid. If you're old like me, most people aren't going to go get diagnosed at 45 or 40 or whenever I was. So that's a matter for consideration. But so let's continue along talking about the science here. It's true that the portion of the population that is more flighty, that is more intuitive in one sense too, also because lost in their heads, head in the clouds, always seem to be thinking about something. That population right there is going to be more flighty. They're going to be more likely to procrastinate because they're the most procrastinating percentage of the population. Well, we might find some causal stuff other than that, but let's just leave it at that for right now. And yeah, you've isolated a population of people who share similar difficulties. And you're saying, well, I think they must have something wrong with them. But here's the problem. the brain architecture evidence says we've got 5 parts of our brain that are 3 to 10% smaller in childhood. That it's a developmental delay, and that for about 1/3 of ADHD children, they will outgrow the the overcorrelation with certain negative outcomes, with certain negative behaviors, symptomatic behaviors. So he indicates that working memory is probably not going to get any better, but that the ability to stay on task does get better substantially, and that various other things do. Like, some people, you don't outgrow it exactly, but some people, well, I guess they do outgrow it. I guess that's the only word for it. So, that's the claim of this thing. But when you actually look at what they're defining it as, it could be anything. This thing they're describing is not a thing. Well, these 5 regions of the brain are 3 to 10% smaller. Well, as that paper I just read showed, all the cognitive scientists are going, oh, that way doesn't work, what we were doing before with the brain region stuff. We need to talk about interconnectivity between regions is ultimately going to be one of the factors that's huge. And then there's this small world phenomenon, which that means that it's basically a way, it's a strategy of emergence, so that a local system will meet most of its own needs and have highly specialized components that a larger system can't sustain, because of course it has to be less perfect so it can appeal to more people, or so it can work for more people. So the naturally occurring systems or method of dealing with this is to localize nodes. And you have nodes of interactivities between the agents in a given system. In this case, it would be neurons or something. You have interactions between those, interplay between those specific individual agents in that small world community that attend to different things as a group in their own way, as a network of pathways, and that when we try to understand them through the wrong framework, namely a framework of interconnected regions rather than of nodes of function nodes, basically, like little nodes of small world networks that comprise a given region. That it's those networks that are more strongly determinant, and specifically their ability to interconnect with regions not their own. Okay, well, that throws quite a wrench into Dr. Russell Blakely's whole idea right there, unfortunately, because his principle, even if he were to be advocating in favor of a model that's based on neural networking, it doesn't do him any good, because they don't have the technology to actually do the neural networking yet that would be potentially indicative. And most importantly, if in fact that's how the cognition is attained, through small world local nodes of small world networks, then it's functionally impossible to to know anything about cognition in that way. You've got things that function apparently as independent nodes, but they are going to have some sort of mutually impacting relationship with other function nodes, and so as a consequence, it becomes a chaotic system almost right away, and you can't keep track of it. You can't trace it down causally like in that fashion. That's what it means. In the same way that you can't trace down causally why the economy works. And I was happy to read this that is called that. I have a word for it now. So small world systems nature. I really like the fact that that it's in the literature, this phenomenon of locality as a solution. It's a good thing I can make an analog from, or analogy from. So we do see that these same sort of analogous mechanisms that we see in all other parts of the universe, here we see them here too. You end up in a situation where you hit walls of irreducibility. You can't understand consciousness through your fucking brain imaging, okay? Now let's talk about it from, you can understand the brain, you can't understand consciousness. Not meaningfully. So what we can do is we can smell and see what it looks like when there's a need to codify, a need to concretize into a label and a diagnosis a whole range of different quote-unquote behaviors that really aren't behaviors at all, but instead are prioritizations of, as he indicated, high time preference. What's it called? I forget. That we need shit to be on a short time frame. So I'm too tired to finish this video. I gotta go to bed. Okay, well, let me just try to get to some sort of an ending here for part one of this. So the point is, he says all kinds of shit that reflects just how heavily he's internalized the nonsense. He talks about oppositional display disorder and says that I'll have to do it tomorrow. I want this video to come out good. I'm too tired.